All right, this is Ephraim Hanks. He's my neighbor, and he is a marriage and family therapist, a clinical social worker, and he's almost a doctor, almost has his doctorate degree in psychology. So we're going to ask him some questions and see if he can give us the answers. What are some of the most common problems in marriages?
If I had to narrow it down to two of the most common that I've seen, I would say selfishness and dishonesty, I think, are at the root of 90% of problems in marriage. It's usually either one of those or a combination of those. And so a lot of couples that I've worked with in the past were kind of doing things to work on those things. Because all it really takes is one person in a marriage to become really selfish, and it can sabotage the whole thing. And same with dishonesty, because marriages are really built around trust, and that's what it takes to have a successful marriage. If one or both of the people in the marriage are dishonest, there can't be trust, and then it becomes very difficult.
Okay. So what are some of the ways that those things manifest? Like, what are some of the actions that people do that are selfish or that are dishonest?
I think there's a lot of things. I mean, there's kind of the obvious ones of infidelity, people having affairs. There's dishonesty with finances, which is very common. Either one or both partners hiding spending habits from the other, or not being honest about income that's coming in so that they can use it. I think the selfishness one can come in a lot of different ways as well. I think it can be selfishness with time or with hobbies or interests outside of the marriage. So it's good that even in a marriage we all kind of still have our individual things that we do that kind of, give us some good stuff on the side, but I think sometimes that can become too much. So if a husband has a hobby of doing something and he's out of the home all the time and it becomes this kind of selfish thing where that's my time and that's all I do, then that can be kind of counterproductive. So there has to be a balance, I think, with that stuff. So selfishness can creep in a lot of different areas like that.
Okay, cool, thank you. So when these problems arise, what are some of the conflict resolution strategies or coping strategies, problem-solving strategies that you give people to help them work through those things?
I like to work a lot on kind of communication skills with couples, and I think a lot of the time it's about partners learning how to do really good active listening with each other, which I find most couples are horrible at. Everybody says they're a good listener. Very few people actually are. Most people are really good thinkers of what I want to say nexters, rather than like really listening to understand what somebody's saying. So that one's huge, because in a marriage, if one or both people's not feeling heard or validated, you can sit and talk all day and it's not going to get you anywhere. So I think that piece is huge. So I'll really train couples on how to do that. The other piece that I think is really important is sometimes we forget why we fell in love with somebody or what we loved about them to begin with. So I'll see couples that will suddenly only be able to focus on the faults of the other person. And it's so easy to see what the faults are and forget, oh yeah, when we first met, I really liked this and this and this, and this is what attracted me to you. And we kind of lose sight of that. So I think focusing on what the positive things are, because the thing about relationships, where we focus is what becomes larger. So if we focus on positive things, we're going to come to appreciate our partner more. If we focus on and get nitpicky over their little flaws, pretty soon that's all we're going to be able to see, and we're going to think, why did I even marry this person? This person is so flawed. And it sounds simple, but it really is kind of that simple.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So as these problems arise in marriages, your selfishness and dishonesty, are those what you would say like the main causes of divorce?
Yeah, I think those are a part of every couple I've ever known that went through a divorce. At least one or both of those have been there. But I think that when people get divorced, it's a little more than that. I think they get to a place where there's been so much of that dishonesty and selfishness that they lose hope that there's any kind of a future for their relationship. And once one or both partners kind of lose that hope, it starts a downward spiral where they can very quickly say, I'm out of here, I'm going to move on to the next thing. So part of the work in helping a couple who's kind of on the verge of divorce is helping them reconnect with a feeling of hope, like it doesn't necessarily have to be over if you're both willing to work at it, and if you can see some common good together. And especially in marriages where there's children involved, I think it's worth a couple investing in, either some professional counseling or clergy, but really kind of being able to work on that and get back to a relationship that's good. Because really what I found is that even with some of the couples who are the closest to divorce, there's still a lot of room for hope if they're both willing to work on it. And I've seen couples come back from the brink of divorce many times and have great successful marriages. But it depends on both of their willingness to invest in it and to really work on it, but it's almost always doable.
Cool, thank you. So kind of on those same lines, but switching gears just a little bit, when a couple does get divorced, what are some of the effects that you see with family members, with their kids and their families?
The research on this is pretty interesting, because when I first went into the field, I thought, it's kind of a no-brainer. The kids are going to really struggle, and it's going to be bad news for everyone. The research that I've read kind of indicates that kids that go through a divorce, having their parents divorced, can actually come out doing okay if parents are able to be congenial with each other, and if they can provide an environment where there's kind of low conflict and the kids feel supported and loved by both of the parents, then kids can do okay in a divorce situation. Too often when divorce happens, though, it's kind of nasty and there's a lot of fighting, and then it goes to court, and then there's kind of this custody battle oftentimes. So kids struggle with that. And then you kind of get into kids having issues, emotional and behavioral disorders, which will manifest in school and all kinds of areas. So if parents can, through mediation, be kind of adult about it and congenial, most kids can do okay. I think it does have a little bit to do with the age that the kids are. But yeah, kids can come through it all right based on how the parents can kind of pull it together.
Okay. So when the parents aren't pulling it together so well, that's when the kids struggle. What kinds of coping strategies do you give those kids to help them deal with that divorce?
Yeah, that can be tough. It kind of depends on the age of the kid. So if it's a young kid, you're generally going to kind of work in terms of like your art and play therapies with them. And if they're kind of 2 to 5 or 6, it's not as much about talk therapy, obviously. It's kind of more about them being able to express their feelings through other mediums. And that can be really successful. But really it's about kids being able to kind of have their opinion and their voice heard. Oftentimes I'll do a lot of work with parents. So even if they're divorced, I'll want to get them in a room together and say, look, we have some common shared interest here, and it's that you both love the kids. Mm-hmm. So for the purpose of them, we're going to put a kind of a game plan together, because even though there's a lot of water under the bridge between the two of you and things aren't so great, we have this shared common goal, and we can put a little structure together to make sure the kids come out of this okay. And it really doesn't take that much. It's just parents being willing to sign on to a couple of rules about how they're going to interact around the kids. There's a lot of complications that come from that, but it can be mitigated if parents are willing to work on it. So also, I think it's important to kind of include teachers in the loop. If a kid's struggling, to be able to go and have a parent-teacher conference and say, hey, you know, we got divorced, keep an eye on my boy or my daughter, she's really struggling with whatever. So there's kind of a range of things. Also, I think as consistent as you can keep it for the kids, the environment. So a divorce situation where kids are having to get up and move to a new location is going to compound everything and make it that much more difficult. So the more stability you have, excuse me, so kids are going to the same school, kids have the same friends, they're going to the same church group, it's not going to be like the carpet's being pulled out from under them quite as much.
Okay. And then my last question for you, what are some behaviors that help to build strong marriages so they don't have to deal with all this not so fun stuff?
I think number one is healthy expectations. Knowing that when you get married and you go on your honeymoon and things are awesome and you think, wow, this is going to be the best ever, that it's normal that you're going to have disagreements in a marriage. It's normal that at some point in that marriage, trust is going to be violated by somebody. It's normal that you're going to have to work through ups and downs of even maybe health challenges, mental illness. And I don't think a lot of us picture this kind of stuff when we're younger, getting married. So setting your expectations that this is really, it's an investment and it's going to take some work. And I think if people have that mindset going in, they can weather the storms that come a lot better. And I think that's a big piece of it. I see so many people just with unrealistic expectations. I think the other thing is really early on, getting some professional counseling. A lot of people will think, oh, you don't go to a counselor unless you are on the verge of like just either suicide or you're getting divorced or something horrible.
It's kind of like a social stigma.
Yeah.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
You know.
Still has a social stigma. But a good counselor will help you be able to kind of set up some rules and structure for your marriage that will fit for you, that you guys can use for the rest of your life, building on communication skills and some of the things we talked about, trust and selfishness and really finances, which a lot of couples argue about, kind of setting all that stuff up so that you're really setting yourself up for success in the relationship rather than just waiting for something bad to happen and then saying we don't know really how to deal with it. So I've done a lot of premarital counseling, which is really, really helpful for couples in setting expectations like we talked about, and then getting some of those basic skills so that they can be successful down the road when challenges arise.
Okay. All right. Well, that is all of my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.